My experience with Finn was in the in this form and body was very brief, because I met Finn at the beginning of 2006. I was in my late 20s, and this was at an evolutionary salon gathering, folks from around the world. And I'm blessed in that I have had a lot of people who know more than I do, who I deeply respect, who I get to learn tremendous amounts from. But there's a certain quality of like teacher for me, which is when not only can I learn from someone, but I feel like we speak the same language. And for me, that's like a body, heart, mind, soul language. And I had never experienced that barometer go off inside of me the way it did when I got to experience being in space with Finn. And so I've been reflecting on, you know, what are some of those aspects of what really just caught my whole spirit? And three things really stood out to me. One is, you know, as has been named, the deep reverence for listening, and listening at so many layers. Finn would communicate what was going on in his brain. He would communicate what was happening in his body. He would communicate about how his heart was being moved. Like, there were so many layers of listening inside of himself. And then the listening to what's going on in the room, and listening what's going on in between the relationships. And then this profound, you know, as Juanita said, he was extremely tapped in, this listening to, I don't necessarily call it anything, but like spirit, into this greater field, this greater something that's out there. The other part that, like, it just makes my body tingle naming it, is he was fierce about naming what is happening in the moment. And I feel like that, like, there was a laser to cut through anything that was not like, anytime it felt like the group was getting lost in our heads or talking about what we already know, or any of the dynamics that were not like real and sacred and fierce to what's happening in the moment, he just had a way of laser sharp and simply and humbly calling attention to it. So that when Juanita mentioned about those who notice, ones who notice, it made me feel like so much of his practice was about noticing and then inviting a collective to, let's be here together. Let's be quiet, let's listen, and let's listen to our togetherness, and then see what is it that emerges that's beyond what we already know. And what was unique for me is that I've actually been in a lot of spaces where that kind of like spiritual container was held. But what those spaces often lack, that Finn also brought, was he had a profound insight and patterning, as Toka named, to what is the larger context that we're in. The larger context that we're in as this group that's gathered here right now, but even more so the larger context of this moment in time that we find ourselves in. So I think about, I don't know if it's like November, December, we were together when he got sick before he went home and passed away. And the questions he was asking then in 2006 was, what do we need to know and be practicing about large-scale mass migration? Because as climate change, as social political systems start to collapse, there's going to be large numbers of humans needing to migrate. And so what do we need to be understanding as organizers and mobilizers and facilitators to tend to like this mass migration? And so it just, the balancing of like being with the sacred, being with so profoundly with the moment, while also holding such a profound relationship with this larger context, that relationship symbolizes so much to me. And I just wanted to say one more thing, that I was looking at a video from that last gathering we were together, and there's just like 3 simple practices that he named that I think are so rich, which is to stay in inquiry. And even if it's just the ambition to be in inquiry, you know, have that ambition to stay in inquiry. Often that we're thinking, we're exercising, we're practicing what we want to say, but not really in the inquiry and in the question. Be willing to stretch beyond what I know into what I don't know. And how do I be with and that's where, again, his body wisdom, to be able to recognize when is he in that place of like in what he knows, and how to stretch beyond that into like what I actually didn't know yet that's now coming through. and then do what I do for the sake of the whole and not for the sake of myself. So it's an honor to be in this inquiry for you and to continue to be receiving the lessons and the magic from his naming and noticing and embodied living. Thank you.